This is the Pick Six Podcast, and this is Sunday Night Super Friends. That's Will Brinson. That's John Breech. I'm Ryan Wilson, and this is the Sunday Night Super Friends Week 14 NFL Recap 2023 edition. Remember, give us a thumbs up if you're watching us on the old YouTubes at NFL and CBS, and of course, subscribe wherever you get your podcast so you never miss a show. All right, boys, you know the deal. Going to hit our top 10 takeaways from Week 14, and there is a lot to get to. The playoff picture continues to take shape, Breech. Are the Bills back? How worried should we be about the Chiefs and Lions and Jaguars? What? Joe Flacco and Jake Browning did what now? And look, we've held off, but I think it's time to have a very serious conversation about the officials. We honestly haven't bellyached about the officials at all, which is something noteworthy for this podcast. But I mean, come on now. We'll talk about that when we get to the Chiefs in a second. But the conversation, Breech,
starts with God trying to take this podcast out with tornadoes. I mean, God.
Well, number one, if you're watching, Breech for the second week in a row is in a hotel, not for good reasons, not for Jake Browning celebration reasons, Breech.
I did not move into my hotel in Jacksonville. That is the most notable. I haven't been in Jacksonville for a full week. I went home. Tornado hit down in Hendersonville, Tennessee, where I live. All the electricity is gone in that city, and so I'm living in a hotel right now talking with these guys.
And then we had a tornado touchdown in Raleigh earlier today. No, it wasn't. I think I was right outside of the tornado watch or tornado warning.
I appreciate you taking Breech's plight and making it your own, but go
ahead. Brinson's point was that, and producer Harry's not here either. Brinson's point is that we're being taken out one by one.
So Wilson might want to drive slowly home with two hands on the wheel from the office. That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Shout out to producer Harry. Hope you get better. He's dealing with some stuff. I texted him today, said I was going to be up in Connecticut, and he's like, well, I will not be there. So get well, Harry. Jokes on Debo because Debo's back. Eagles lose from Debo tonight. We'll talk to him later, I'm sure, if he is done crying. But Breech, before we get to Debo's sadness, let's talk about the team that gave Debo his sadness, the Dallas Cowboys. And I want to apologize. I got a lot of apologies to get through over the next 4 or 5 weeks to Mike McCarthy, because I didn't think Mike McCarthy was telling the truth when he said he took a year off and did the PFF tour and had a lot of introspection sitting by the lake, looking at the swans. But apparently, Breech, he did all those things. He might be the running for coach of the year. Dak Prescott is definitely the running for MVP. I'm sure Brinson will tell us the odds momentarily. I would imagine he's the front runner. We know the 49ers are who the 49ers are, and we'll get to them in a second. But explain to me who is beating the Dallas Cowboys at home, who are now the number 2 seed in the NFC.
Well, and that's the crazy thing is no one. I mean, they're not just undefeated at home. They're blowing everyone out. They're winning all of these games by double digits. And like you just said with Dak Prescott and the MVP talk, I think it's got to be absolutely real. Look, I'm not going to sit here and toot my horn and say I was the only person who had Dak Prescott as my preseason MVP at plus 2,500, but I was. And
all right,
this is why he looks so comfortable now running this offense. And I think a part of it, we didn't see Brandon Cooks make many contributions at the beginning of the season. He's been kind of roping him in. Jake Ferguson had a big night, 5 catches, 72 yards. Michael Gallup, he's using all of his weapons, obviously CeeDee Lamb there. And that's what it takes. He is fully embracing Mike McCarthy's offense. And this team is just 1,000% better than it was in October when they got railroaded by the 49ers.
The Dallas Cowboys are now at home 7-0 on the season. Do you know what their point differential is at home this year?
It's in the millions.
It's not that far away. It's plus 171 points at home in 7 games. That is outrageous. So you're talking about they're winning these home games by an average of 24.4 points per game. The only one that's been remotely close was the Thursday night game last week against Seattle when both teams had that rest and because they played on Thanksgiving. Dak is, in fact, the MVP favorite, plus 175 now. I see over at DraftKings, they do a great job of updating those ASAP. Brock Purdy closely behind him at 2-1. Lamar Jackson 4.5-1. Jalen Hurts 5-1, and then Mahomes and Tua at 10-1. Tyreek 13. Christian McCaffrey 20. And I think that if you were, doing I think Lamar and Dak would be the two, the two guys that I would look at. Like I think if Dak can get the 1 or the 2 seed, win the division, I think they probably have to win the division. Although with the Cowboys, I think you could possibly get away with not winning the division, maybe, and Dak getting it because they're the Cowboys. Is that possible?
No, and they don't win the MVP typically, so I don't know if that helps. I mean, Breech has the rule about, it's not his rule, it's actually the way the league unfolds about the MVP has to win the division. Do you still hold by that, Breech?
I mean, I would, because who's going to get the number 1 seed if it's the 49ers? Brock Purdy's doing some absurd things statistically that we haven't seen in years. But is Dak going to get that love from playing for America's team? I don't think that's that crazy of a theory, Brinson. But I would say Brock Purdy, maybe the odds don't reflect that, would be his number 1 competition right now. I mean, he had a career day today that we'll talk about later.
I feel like every week is a career day for Brock Purdy. Let me ask you this, Brinson, because this is something that our buddy Joe Musso and I talked about earlier this evening. Typically, there's a moment or moments in the Cowboys season where you go, yep, there's Mike McCarthy, and up there's Dak Prescott throwing stupid interceptions. We have seen none of that this year. Mm-hmm. And you could argue that their biggest gaffe, and Breech, you have a memory for these things, so you can correct me, was finding a way to lose that game in week 9 to the Eagles, a game they probably should have won. But it feels like this team is hitting on all cylinders finally for Jerry Jones. And a big part of that's the defense balling out. But Dak Prescott has made very few mistakes. Mike McCarthy has reinvented himself as a play caller. Maybe Kellen Moore was the problem, which is nuts to say. But are you concerned at all that there's some hiccup unforeseen in the Dallas Cowboys future that history might suggest is on its way? Because I don't see it. Brinson.
No, I mean, I don't think that. I think what, you have to give credit to. I mean, they're playing at the Bills next week. I wouldn't be surprised if they went into Buffalo and lost that game. Buffalo looked like a much different team coming out of their bye against Kansas City. We'll get to that in a minute. And then they're at the Dolphins. So that's your hiccup, I guess, is having to go to Buffalo and then having to go to Miami. They haven't been great on the road. We're talking about 3-3 on the season. They are 6-2 out of the division, 3-2 outdoors this season. And again, you look at the losses though. They get stomped at San Francisco in that primetime game, and San Francisco just got up for that. San Francisco has made it very clear they want to dominate some of these other, like they dominated the Cowboys, they dominated the Eagles. Want to send a statement to the rest of the division. The Cowboys lost that game at Philly as well, but that game could have easily been a Dallas win. Like that was a really close game. And then you have at the Cardinals game that they lost, where like they were just clearly, coming off the 70 point differential from the first 2 games, looking ahead past the Cardinals. So, I mean, I think all their losses, the 3 losses sort of make sense from that perspective. So I don't think they're going to go in there and like stumble. I think they'll bring their A game. They could go 0-2 in those games just because they're difficult matchups against 2 quality teams, although the Dolphins haven't beaten anybody. Then you have the Lions at home and the Commanders on the road to close out. So I think you can make a case that while they might not stumble, the Eagles get the Giants twice, the Cardinals once, and then the Seahawks next week. So even if the Cowboys don't stumble per se, I still think you look at the Eagles and say they have a much better chance at winning the division. This is not a great loss, but they're 72% according to the Upshot to win the NFC East, whereas the Cowboys just 28%.
And that's like that.
Does this team feel different?
Absolutely. Cowboys? They're playing with swagger. Like they expected to win this game. The Cowboys are usually the laughing stock of the country after they play a team with a winning record because they usually lose. Right. We saw it against the 49ers and they lost 42-10. We saw it when the Eagles game that Brinson mentioned, when they lost 28-23. And this team is carrying themselves differently. They're confident. It's really crazy to see it. You see Dak in postgame saying the defense carried us. You see the defensive guys in postgame saying Dak and the offense carried us. Nobody's taking any of the credit. The kicker doesn't even do interviews, who I want to mention real quick because he is the best weapon in the NFL right now. First kicker in NFL history to hit multiple field goals of 59 yards or more in a game. Hit the longest kick in the first quarter in NFL history ever with the 60-yarder. And to that point, that's another part of the Mike McCarthy analytical movement. There's a reason kickers have never hit a 60-yarder in the first quarter because that's a high-risk play. It's if you don't make it, the other team gets the ball. The other team gets the ball midfield, so you don't want to risk it. But McCarthy's saying, no, our kicker can hit this. I trust him enough in a big game to hit this, and I'm sure he'll do it again. So that changes the way you think, the way you run your offense. So Brandon Aubrey is the weapon this year.
You're getting choked up. I love it. I love it.
Your voice. Yeah. Oh,
That
hacking you were doing before the show makes a little more sense now that you're losing your voice.
So,
Hey, look, well, I was just gonna say that I do think they have a different aura about them. The Cowboys do. Like they are a much more confident team. The play calling. Look, give Mike McCarthy credit. He said, "Screw it. I'm not rolling with Kellen Moore anymore. Any longer. He convinced Jerry Jones to let him push Kellen Moore aside and
I
take
like
the
Kellen
wheel.
Moore any more better, by the way.
Yeah, I know, right? And took the wheels in terms of the play calling, and he has been awesome. The play calling has been great. Dak has been fantastic in this West Coast or Texas Coast offense or whatever we're calling it. And you've seen CeeDee Lamb has emerged as one of the, I don't know. I mean, CeeDee Lamb is one of the 5 best receivers in football right now, easily. Like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill, AJ Brown, and CeeDee Lamb. Is that the group? Maybe
he's second in the NFL in receiving yards.
Yeah, I mean, I think given like Jamar, I don't know if Damien mentioned. Yeah, I mean, I think Justin Jefferson being banged up, you can make a case CeeDee Lamb's the best receiver in football. Like it wouldn't be that crazy. He has been awesome. He moves all over the place. He's physical. Jake Ferguson, as Breech points out, has broken out this year, and you just have like an offensive line that's playing really well. The running game hadn't even been great, but Rico Dowdle's been a nice supplement to Tony Pollard, who hasn't really filled that explosive role that we thought we would get. It's a really good football team. Michael Gallup's playing well. Brandon Cook's coming on. There's no reason to believe they can't hang with anybody scoring wise. The defense is playing great football. Dan Quinn's awesome. Micah Parsons killing it. I mean, bull rush Lane Johnson into Jalen Hurts tonight. I think the one concern would be, inevitably, when this team runs into San Francisco or Philadelphia in the playoffs, does Mike McCarthy
we'll get to that. I mean, let them enjoy it. We don't have to crap.
Breech has brainwashed you guys. Cowboys are going to win the Super Bowl.
There you go.
I'm just saying we've seen these type of performances from Aaron Rodgers, Packers, Mike McCarthy teams before, and you get to the playoffs and they tighten up and he gets conservative. No, you don't have time for that. It's
week 14. Let him enjoy it. Let Breech enjoy his victory as the Breech spot. I just want to say quickly, Breech, Aubrey, Joe Musso did the math on this, 316 yards of kicking tonight through the goalpost. I don't know where that ranks, but that's fun. Also, less fun, Debo, if you are composed, do you want to explain why the Eagles are where they are and if there's a fix? Because I don't know if there is, given the injuries and on both sides of the ball, injuries, Jalen Hurts, lack of a running game, and then your best players fumbling the ball is going to happen every week. But what are the biggest concerns for you? Is it the loss of the coordinators? Is it something else? What's going on?
I'm going to take the optimistic approach. They're still going to win the division. I think
look at
the NFL playoffs. The NFC playoffs is an easier stretch than the stretch that they've just had.
That's a good point.
About Cowboys, Chiefs, Bills, 49ers, Cowboys. The
That's tough.
playoffs would look like Packers, Lions, and then 49ers or Cowboys. I could very much see the Eagles hosting the Cowboys in the NFC Championship. What do you think about that?
That would help their cause, because you don't want to play, as Breech noted, you don't want to play in Dallas under any circumstances. But why is this team different, though, Debo, between now and 12 months ago?
I think it's the stretch. Like the Cowboys had much more pop tonight. They had the hardest stretch in NFL history. They went 3-2 during it. They played teams, the 2 best teams, on back-to-back 10 days rest. I didn't think they would tonight. AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, I think, are a top 3 wide receiver duo in the league, and they looked like James Thrash and Todd Pinkston from the early 2000s tonight.
Catching strays.
Give Al Harris credit. Like they obviously, I think, identified something and were punching at that ball. 3 fumbles as the Eagles were driving. The Cowboys
the hardest stretch in NFL history. What are you talking about?
I mean,
it's a tough stretch.
That's a stat. That's been in the research.
Who says that stat?
That's in the research packets.
Is that harder than what the Seahawks had to do at the Rams versus the Niners, at the Cowboys versus at the 49ers versus the Eagles? Like coming up, I don't know, man.
All right, so Debo's not concerned. Brinson, what's your level of concern about this Eagles?
But it's not,
You're taking the optimistically concerned approach.
like I usually do, yeah.
Like you usually do. So, Brinson, this team has gone from 1 to 5. Are you at all concerned?
Yes and no. I think they'll win the division. I think they have the sort of, I don't know, they got the Giants twice left and the Cardinals. They're going to win the division.
Okay. I mean, they're not playing good football, despite Debo's optimism.
They are. I think Pete Prisco used the word, and like I've heard this. I think Adam Schein used this word on Friday. I think the word I would use is. So I'm just going to use the word they've been using.
You're building a suspense. I can't
wobbly.
Okay. Well, that's not where you want to be. December 11th.
No, it's not where you want to be. You don't want to be wobbly on December 11th, but you've got 4 games to get right. You win out, and you're going to be at worst the 2 seed. I think they have a 23% chance to get the number 1 seed, with the 49ers now at a 71% chance to get the number 1 seed. So that's going to make life tough. You're going to have to go to San Francisco, but you can go do it. I think if the Eagles, it wouldn't shock me if the Eagles played their best football and went back to the Super Bowl. I also think because they've been wobbly, because Jalen Hurts is banged up, because you have guys on the defensive line, like the Cowboys are healthy at the right time. It feels like the 49ers got it, like lost they had their wobbles with those 3 games and the injuries in early, like earlier in the season, and then got healthy. And now the Eagles are dealing with that. And so you just sort of wonder, like, if something happens to Lane Johnson and he has to miss time, I don't know. Like I'm concerned, but this team is going to the playoffs and nobody wants to play them.
Breech, how do you feel about the Eagles right now? Just
gut feeling,
reaction.
If I had a choice and I had to play the Cowboys or the Eagles in the playoffs right now, I would fly the Eagles to my city to play them.
The Eagles defense is playing a lot worse than the Cowboys defense.
You know what's funny? So earlier today, the 4th seed is Tampa Bay, which is funny in and of itself, but they would have had to play the Cowboys. Todd Bowles does not want that. As soon as the game's in tonight, I said exactly what you said, Breech. I would imagine the Tampa Bay would welcome having Philadelphia come into Tampa Bay, knowing they have a puncher's chance. You don't have a chance against the Cowboys, Tampa Bay, or where you play on the moon. That game, you're losing by a lot of points. So I think you're right there.
You can beat the Cowboys
by myself. I don't think
on the road.
I appreciate your faith in me. Debo is doing a terrible time with clock management, unlike Harry. So I'm going to move on.
Jeez.
Unless Debo's hitting the button in some room that we're not in.
Debo's emotionally broken.
I know.
Now that you're not watching that game, let's stop talking about it so that Debo can mentally recover.
Get your mind right. And do your job. I should yell at Debo like Patrick Mahomes yelled at the official at the end of that game. We're going to talk about the Kansas City game next because so the 4th and 15 play ended it. Kansas City was trying to make that drive. Got the 4th and 15. The reason they had 4th and 15 because in the previous play, it was a fantastic throw to Kelsey. Kelsey made a great throw, lateral 20-yard throw in the air to Kadarius Toney, scored a touchdown, would have put them up with less than a minute to go over the Bills, except Kadarius Toney was between 4 and 5 inches offsides. Now, in the post game, what does mean?
I would suggest he was a little more than 4 or 5 inches. Well, the neutral zone is the neutral zone is the length of the football.
Okay, his foot was in the blue line, right? I think
the neutral. So the only person allowed in the neutral zone is the center who can put his hand in there. I'm just putting. I'm not telling you. I'm just.
I understand, but let me get to the point, and then we can talk about it. Whether he was a lot or a little. Here's the point that Patrick Mahomes was making. He's been in the league since 2017. He has never seen offensive offsides called. He said in the post-game interview that typically, and we see it all the time, receivers look to the official on the side, point at him. He says, "Okay," or back up. The official didn't do anything. We'll have to see if there was any conversation between Kadarius Toney and that official. And Patrick Mahomes was livid. I've actually never seen him that angry during a game. I'm sure he's been that mad at his brother before for some TikTok nonsense, but we haven't seen that either. So he was fired up during the game. In fact, they had to hold him back from yelling at the official before the 4th and 15 play. He was angry after the game, and there was some audio caught in the middle of the field when he went to shake hands with Josh Allen. It looked like on the outside looking in that Josh Allen said, hey, man, I'm sorry we had to win that way. Josh Allen didn't say anything, it turns out. And Patrick Mahomes said, that was a BS call. Offensive offsides never called, which is a weird thing. You're muted, which is a weird thing to even bring up to Josh Allen. It's not his fault. But Brett,
I think Josh Allen actually brought it up first.
Not according to the audio I heard, but either way, the point is this. What do we make of this Chiefs team? And I like Patrick Mahomes' edge there, but some people thought it rubbed them the wrong way. So where are you at on those two things?
I thought that Patrick Mahomes, I love Patrick Mahomes. I love Andy Reid. I think they're two of the best competitors and the most engaging talents at their respective positions.
And you love their State Farm commercials.
I'm a little tired of the State Farm commercials.
Okay.
There's many things about Mahomes that are weird and annoying, but as a football player and as like a personality, I think he's fantastic. Andy Reid is like maybe my favorite coach of all time. I mean, he's just engaging, gregarious, entertaining. Like his offensive schemes are awesome. I thought they kind of looked like a couple of, I don't know, like you want some cheese with that wine, guys? Like, dude, Kadarius Toney was blatantly offsides, and I will read this from our colleague Gene Sterator, who wrote this on X.com. When officiating the line of scrimmage, general philosophy is not to be overly technical and split hairs over very minor infractions, such as a receiver's hand slightly breaking the line of scrimmage. However, when an infraction is so egregious and obvious, bold, a flag has to be thrown. Kadarius Toney is bold, blatantly lined up offside in the neutral zone. You rarely see an offsides penalty on the offense, but that is not because this play in Buffalo, Kansas City isn't a foul. Bold, it is because a receiver rarely lines up offsides. Kadarius Toney is like even with Bills players almost. Now, there was some debate about whether he looked at the official as if to say, am I on or off? You can see him turn to the right. I think he's probably looking at Patrick Mahomes, waiting for him to snap it, not checking with the official. We saw Tracy Wolfson note that he did look. He's just in the neutral zone, and
I thought it was closer than that, but I whatever. I can't. I mean, I can't change time, so it doesn't matter. I think it's one of those things. And the other thing is, does it affect the play? No. Why are we getting involved? This is the first example of this, and I don't have any dog in this fight. But again, like on Thursday night, the Steelers, the long snapper breach on the extra point. Technically, was that a penalty? Maybe. I don't know. It didn't affect the game in that sense. But why are we wasting time calling these plays and mucking up a game that people enjoy watching, not for the officials, but before? That was one of the most insane plays we saw all season. And it's not, it doesn't count. Go ahead.
My personal issue is that why is this the call that you are going totally crazy for? As Brinson mentioned, it was clearly a penalty. Like, we can argue about whether the officials are calling this regularly, but he was offsides. So you can't argue the fact that the official threw the flag. When they played the Packers on Sunday, there was one of those blatant interference calls at the end of that game where the Chiefs receiver got interfered with. There was no flag. If you're Kansas City, that's when you go crazy. That's when you yell at everyone. That's when you threaten to fight people, so that the NFL can say, oh, we blew that call. We screwed over Patrick Mahomes. NFL's not having that reaction tonight. They're laughing to themselves like, our ref got this right, and now Mahomes looks silly. So it just blows my mind, and maybe it's frustration for him boiling over that they've now lost 2 games on controversial officiating calls, but one was correct.
Blatant? Sorry to interrupt you, Breech. If you're watching on YouTube, this foot's in the blue line. It's not like his foot is like he's not on the Bills.
But look, the neutral zone is where like he is the front of his foot is in front of the football. Like the neutral zone is the football, and he has crossed the neutral zone into like the Bills neutral zone territory.
I don't see that, but I mean, it doesn't matter. The flag was called, but it doesn't seem blatant to me. I
mean, it's offsides. It doesn't matter if it's blatant. You agree it's offsides?
Yeah.
That's it. So
it's so here's Carl Cheffers asked by the pool reporter Matt Derrick following the game. It's like, walk us through that what the officiating crew saw and how that play was flagged. Yeah, sure. It's one of those things we don't want to be overly technical on, but when in his alignment, he's lined up over the ball. That's something that we're going to call as offensive offside. So that's what the down judge saw. He saw that the alignment was over the ball, and that's what he ruled on the field. That's what he called. They mentioned Andy Reid. yes, ultimately, if they look for alignment advice, certainly we're going to give it to them. But ultimately, they are responsible for wherever they line up. And certainly no warning is required, especially if they're lined up so far off sides where they're actually blocking our view of the ball. So we would give them some sort of a warning if it was anywhere close. But this particular one is beyond a warning. I mean, look,
it's fine. Look, man, you can't rewrite history. And Kadarius Toney is had some knuckleheaded. He had a drop in this game. I mean, it's not like he's Travis Kelce making this play. It's a guy who's has a history of doing stuff that it doesn't help his football team. I'm just at the point where I'm tired of seeing them interfere. This did not affect the play.
And real quick, if for some reason someone listening did not watch this game, it was a 51-yard touchdown pass with just over a minute left where Travis Kelce caught it, then lateraled it to Kadarius Toney. Travis Kelce was 25 yards downfield, lateraled it to Toney.
The strike for the lateral, like
perfect
an absolute
pass.
spiral.
And Toney coasts in for the touchdown. And
all right,
all called back because of this.
Let me ask you this. So I do you think that because last week the Chiefs lost to the Packers, so okay, I'm gonna make a statement, then I'm gonna ask a question.
Mm-hmm.
I think that in the last 2 weeks, the Chiefs have been involved in close games where they had a pass interference call that should have been called. The NFL has acknowledged that should have been called. Now, were the Chiefs holding on that play? I think so, but that's, again, subjective, just like the pass interference call. This week, you have that touchdown. You think you're probably going to win the game or at least take the lead, and this happens. I think that Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes are boiling over in frustration in a way that we have never seen from them ever. And you rarely see from like high-level NFL coaches and high-level NFL quarterbacks out of a realization that as good as they are at their jobs, and as good as Travis Kelce is at his job, and as good as the defense has played, that they are currently only one game up on Denver for the division, which is wild, and that they are going to have a really, really, really hard time of forcing the playoffs to go through Arrowhead Stadium, which it's done for the last 4 years. And I think
not going through Arrowhead. I mean, that's
but that's part of. I think that's part of the frustration here from these guys, not necessarily on this one play. I also think it's a little odd that we saw them melt down this week versus last week. And I would suggest, let me ask you this. Do you think, this is the question, do you think that
thanks for letting me know that can
well
what's the question?
Do you think that because of what happened with the play that the outrage was more aggressive than it would have than if it had been like an incomplete pass? You see what I'm saying? Like last week it was like incomplete pass interference.
Yes.
And then now this week it's a crazy lateral play. Yeah.
I don't think Andy Reid was showing much emotion. I think Patrick was pissed off about the way the play ended because it had no effect on it. That was my take on it. I don't think they care about the Denver Broncos. I think they are frustrated with the way the offense isn't working. That's my take, Breech.
Yeah, and I think to that point, though, that the Chiefs in the years past, they knew they were good enough to overcome little losses like this or little mistakes, but now they've lost, 4 of their past 6? I mean,
4, that's right.
It's a big number, and so it makes it really feel like the Chiefs aren't invincible. They can't just pull something magic out of their hat, pull a rabbit out of their ear, and beat other teams. And so now they're getting genuinely frustrated because, hey, we can't just go out there and win games. We need these calls to go our way. So it's just interesting to see their personality change in that sense.
They're 1-3 since their bye.
That's not good. Andy Reid, not off the
bye, and
well, you can't.
Their only win is against the Raiders, who are not a very good team and below 500. Their losses are
they lost 3-0 today. They're doing better. I'm kidding. It's a joke. They're terrible.
I was like, what? I was like, wait, the Raiders are bad. I mean, the Raiders are 5-7. They're not like a terrible football team, but I mean, they've lost to 3. You've lost to the Eagles, a team that you played in the Super Bowl last year, that you had on the ropes. You beat the Raiders. You lose at the Packers, which is just a tough one, in a tough fashion. And then you lose at home against the Bills in a game where you were pretty desperate to try to get to 9-4, right? And have an opportunity to stay alive in this AFC the race for the number 1 seed.
Yep, and it's not great. A lot of it, I think, is frustration, as we talked about, with the way the offense isn't working like it has historically. We're going to take a quick break here, but before we do, I'll just say before we do this, huge win for Sean McDermott, who had a tough week. So shout out to Sean McDermott. So
gave me game ball in the locker room. I don't know if you saw that.
Ty Dunn should write a story every week about Sean McDermott. This team is definitely winning the Super Bowl because they rallied around him.
Yeah.
But we'll talk a little bit more about the Bills when we get to the AFC playoff picture, because that was a huge win for them. And Josh Allen was cooking like he was Russ Wilson 3 years ago. All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about those Buffalo Bills. Are they back or not? Because somebody on this podcast said they were a playoff team last week, and 2 other people laughed at that one person. We'll find out who right after this.
On the next NFL Monday QB, with only a month left on the regular season calendar, the Week 14 slate is filled with divisional rivalries. Go under center on the only NFL show all about quarterbacks. Monday on CBS Sports Network.
We are back. Brinson has left the building. He does not want to face the music about Breech's Breech Bot 2000 with the Cowboys. I was all over the Bills. I said, don't sleep on the Bills. I didn't know the Ty Dunn article was coming out to motivate that group. But it feels like Breech, Ken Dorsey's departure has allowed Josh Allen to be more Josh Allen-y. And I think what you have to understand about Josh Allen is he's going to turn the ball over. It does not matter. He'll have 1.5 turnovers a game, but he'll have 4.5 touchdowns through the air or with his legs. And this team's schedule is incredibly tough, but this was probably the toughest test they have. I think they have Dallas next, so that'll be a test, but that's at home in Buffalo, if I recall correctly. And then they finish at Miami, and as you and Brinson like to say, well, it's week 17. They might be sitting everyone in Miami, so maybe no one plays. Maybe you face Mike White. This team feels like it's making the playoffs, Breech.
Yeah, I mean, this team looks driven. They went out there, and I would say by the end of the first quarter, it just really felt like they were going to win the game. Like they just looked possessed. And that doesn't mean they dominated all 4 quarters. It just was one of those games until Josh Allen threw an interception that Wilson just mentioned and let Kansas City back in the game. But yeah, I do feel like this is a playoff team, Wilson. You've talked me into it, even though they do have the Cowboys next week. And then all winnable games.
Wilson's the guy talking to people into the Bills being in the playoffs. Wilson hates the Bills.
Oh, why do you say that?
You've been complaining about the Bills for like 2 years now.
Give me 1 or 10 examples. Thank you.
I'm like, the Bills are dead. You guys are always like, by the way, Breech, it looks like you're wearing a black turtleneck. Is that
he
true?
Put on his sprockets thing. He's good.
No.
Keeps me warm.
I feel like you're always sort of anti-Bills just in terms
Last week I wasn't, and you were. Don't try to turn the tables. Own it.
I picked the Bills to win the Super Bowl.
I'm driving the Bills.
Brinson, we're talking about after the Week 13 podcast. Wilson was the only one who picked the Bills in the AFC playoff picture.
You guys laughed at me because of their tough schedule. I knew the Ty Dunn article was coming out. You guys didn't, so that's a little insider information.
I do think what's interesting about the Ty Dunn article is that, and love Ty Dunn, great dude.
I think Sean McDermott would like a word.
Well, what's interesting is that obviously you had the stuff, the New York 9/11 stuff, right? I mean, that was the thing that it got focused on.
That was not even the top 10 craziest things in that 20,000 word story in my mind.
Right. 3-part story. It's insanely long. Talked to 25 people from the Buffalo Bills organization. I thought what was interesting was that it sort of lost in the whole discussion of it was that against McDermott's sort of wishes in 2020 or 2021, Brian Dable literally said, F it. We're going to be us. We're going to play our game and just cut Josh Allen and the offense loose. And I think you've seen that from Joe Brady the last few weeks. Joe Brady's best interest is letting Josh Allen win games for them. Now, I thought Allen could have, I thought they sort of pulled back the reins a little bit in this game after they got up 14-0 in the second quarter. And Kansas City's defense tightened up. They did a great job of smothering Stephon Diggs. You know, he finished with 11 targets, 4 catches, 24 yards. I mean, that's nothing. They really focused on passing out of the backfield. Josh Allen ran the ball 10 times in this game. If you look at Josh Allen's, I think Josh Allen rushing attempts props for next week are a good look. He's been running the ball a lot more the last couple of weeks, and I think that's going to be sort of the protocol for the Bills moving forward. There's just, they know that he had no games before last week with more than 8 rushing attempts. He had 9 rushing attempts last week, 10 rushing attempts this week. I think that's going to be the standard going forward for Josh Allen, is running the football a lot, willing to just say, I almost said it. Willing to say F it, put his body on the line, and just let the offense go. And I think I think the Bills are going to be back, and they're going to be definitely a playoff contender, probably win the Super Bowl. I think that Ty Dunn article might be the best thing to happen to the Bills season, honestly.
So, Breech, what I've learned is that Brinson agrees with me, and he's stealing my talking points. Give us something quick on the Bills, and we'll get to getting.
I agree with you guys. I'm all in here. Look, if Josh Allen is unleashed and cuts down on the turnovers, I mean, that's really been the story of his career. When he turns the ball over multiple times, they lose. When he doesn't, they win. And so it's like, all right, Josh, you get one free pass. You can fumble it once, throw an interception once. You just can't do it twice. And he played smart football. And I will say the Bills defense looked really good. We've talked all season about the injuries and how beat up they've been. This was probably their best game since suffering those big injuries.
Yeah, a huge win. Great job for them. Also a team that's stacking wins, as the kids say. Baltimore Ravens. The AFC North, last time I checked, had 3 teams. Yes, 3 teams in the playoff bubble. The one that's outside the playoff bubble is the second best team in the division, Breech. It's the Cincinnati Bengals. We'll talk about them in a moment. But a huge win. One of the conversations we had early in the season, the Ravens have only lost 3 games, was that the Ravens play down to their opposition. The Rams are a good football team. That's been Brinson's team all year. He's finally got one right with Matthew Stafford and the Rams resurgence with Sean McVay. They've crushed the draft picks, which is nuts because they don't typically draft players. But Breech, Lamar Jackson quietly in the MVP race. Odell Beckham was acting like it was 2015 today. Zay Flowers had some drops early, came back, made some huge plays late, and that defense has been opportunistic and been getting after it. Here's the question. Anyone in the AFC going to beat this team?
Maybe. I feel like the Rams, if anything, maybe put the blueprint out there that you can beat this team. I was surprised at how well Los Angeles did offensively.
Yeah.
I didn't expect Karen Williams to go out there and rush for over 100 yards and Stafford to throw for almost 300 yards. So, I mean, if Lamar Jackson didn't play lights out, the Rams win. So do you need that Superman Lamar performance to win? They hadn't earlier this season because the defense played so well. So I was just surprised at how much their defense struggled in this game at home in the rain where Stafford generally struggles.
I think Stafford's quickly, Brinson. Stafford actually, and you've been saying this, so I'll give you your flowers. I think that's how you're supposed to say it. He's been balling out, and a lot of credit to him. Awesome. I was not surprised that they were able to play that well offensively.
Yeah, I'm not either. When Stafford's healthy, the Rams are a good football team. Kieran Williams running the ball really well. Cooper Kupp, 8 targets, 8 catches, 115 yards, and a touchdown. He looks like he's back. If Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua are both healthy and fully operational, this offense can do damage. And they have Aaron Donald, so like they can. Lamar Jackson now 19-1 against the NFC. Insane stat. Didn't cover in this game. It required a walk-off punt return touchdown in overtime to win the game. I thought, to me, the biggest story in this game in particular were Odell Beckham and Isaiah Likely, and additionally Zay Flowers, but he's been good all year, stepping up with Mark Andrews going down for the season and sort of like, all right, well, who's going to be the vertical threat here? Now, the 54-yard touchdown that Isaiah Likely had in the first quarter was, I mean, he could not have been more wide open. Like as a freebie. The Beckham one was a bomb from Lamar. I just sort of wonder if you're the Ravens and you're 9 or 10, are they 10-3 now?
Yep.
10-3. They have been dominating in the AFC. They're they got a loss to the Colts by 3 points, a 1-score loss to the Steelers on the road, and a 2-point loss to the Browns, a team that they split with in the division with like a really good defense. There's not really much to nitpick. They swept the Bengals. There's just not much to nitpick here. They're going to have the Steelers in week 18. They have the Dolphins and the Jaguars. I think they'll probably beat the Jaguars, even though it's in Jacksonville next week. Trevor Lawrence banged up. I think they'll beat the Dolphins at home. that their schedule down the stretch is tough. At Jacksonville, at San Francisco, Miami at home, and the Steelers at home. That's not easy. Like if you go 2-2 there, that's a pretty good effort. I think they'll probably go 3-1. I think they'll get the 1 seed. What fascinates me the most, though, is what we saw coming out of the bye with no Mark Andrews was an explosive, not 2019 style quite, but a much more explosive Lamar Jackson, who, by the way, ran the ball 11 times for 70 yards. Credit to Jason Lockenfora. He wrote about this on sportsline.com. Took the over on Lamar's rushing attempts and rushing yards, noting that Lamar has always ramped up his rushing in December when it gets a little tougher to win these games. You sort of wonder, this offense has kept Lamar from running the ball a bunch this year. Now you say, okay, we've made it to December. We're 10-3. We are on track for the 1 seed. Lamar's doing a much better job of sliding and avoiding contact even than he was good at it before, but he's doing a great job of it now. I think Todd Monken is really going to start incorporating a lot of these Lamar designed runs, and some of these runs are scrambles, but I think he's going to start incorporating more rushing point of emphasis on rushing for Lamar moving forward in December and in the playoffs, because he's healthy. He hasn't been taking these hits, and you can really unleash the full weapon that is Lamar Jackson. I think the Ravens, Ravens making the Super Bowl wouldn't be a surprise at all.
Ravens control their own destiny in the AFC, and I think that is playing out in real time. Before we take a quick break, Breech, you talked about the 49ers being basically unstoppable, starting the conversation with Brock Purdy. It's funny to think that Brock Purdy might be the 5th best player on that team, depending on where you start. It could be even lower than that if you're ranking guys. But Baltimore is doing great things in the AFC. I don't know if there's a team in the galaxy that can beat the 49ers when they're fully healthy. Where are you on San Francisco beyond? How do you slow down San Francisco, or are they a healthy team that just wins it all and it feels like it's not even close?
I mean, I don't think you're too far from the truth. They're 17-0 when Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, and Deebo Samuel are all fully healthy. And there's just so many weapons. I mean, look at their losses. It's because they were missing Trent Williams or Deebo Samuel or both of them. And so,
and they could have won 2 of those. They could have won 2 of those games pretty easily too.
I mean, the only game they really got hammered was
the Bengals.
Was the Bengals, but they were missing Trent Williams and Deebo Samuel. So to Ryan's point, those guys all got healthy out of the bye, and since the bye, they're 5-0, and they've won every single one of those games by at least 12 points. So they're just steamrolling everyone, and that's kind of what they did last season, where they got hot and they won double-digit consecutive games to close the season and played well until Brock Purdy got injured. So, yeah, I feel like the 49ers, after watching what the Cowboys did to the Eagles, it feels like the 49ers are the top team in the NFC, Cowboys number 2, and then everyone else.
Let me ask you this, though. The space between 1 and 2, or is it bigger between like 2 and everyone else? Like, it feels like there's a huge gap between San Francisco and everyone else.
They beat the Cowboys 42-10. So
they beat the Cowboys. The 49ers are right. So I mean, the 3 best teams in the NFC, all due respect to 9-4 Detroit, who I think is a really good team, but I think we just need a bigger upside from the 49ers beat the Eagles 42-19, and they beat the Cowboys 42-10. Like, that is a statement flex on your division opponents. Something that I think you remember coming into the following, like when you get into the playoffs, you think about that, and you go back and think about what happened. And this is the thing last year where teams would play the 49ers and lose the next week because the 49ers are so physical. Cowboys play the 49ers, get stomped on Sunday Night Football, barely go and beat the Chargers by 3 points. Eagles get stomped by the 49ers, go to Dallas and get stomped again and look just like a lesser team and look tired. I think San Francisco is the best team in football by a wide margin if everyone is healthy. I was on Kevin Clark's podcast. This is football. This is football? I think it's This is Football. And over at ESPN last week, and we did an impromptu draft of 49ers players. Like, if you're doing an expansion draft, like who do you protect? And Brock Purdy threw the ball downfield today really well. That throw to Deebo Samuel was a seed, man. But Brock Purdy's like the 5th guy that you're protecting?
Yeah, that's what I just said.
I know. It's I'm agreeing with you.
No, I'm just reiterating, and that's not even counting Fred Warner and some guys.
I think it's like Trent Williams might be one.
Well, I think I'm probably taking Debo first. Musso talked me into that. I was.
I'm taking Trent Williams.
Trying to sell myself on Brandon Ayuk. Worth noting before we take a quick break here and try to get through the rest of this thing, because Debo is asleep at the wheel, Breech. It's like he ain't even paying attention. He's like the bus driver at the San Francisco Super Bowl when we almost died.
Debo did post the Chiefs Bills screenshot of the blatant penalty that I DM'd him and said
he was trying to take his mind off of the Eagles.
No, I said please post this.
Oh, there you go. Breech, you sort of glossed over it, but I think it's worth reiterating. Since the bye, the 49ers are 5-0, and their smallest margin of victory was +12, and that was on Sunday in a game they thoroughly dismantled the opponent. So that's how well they're playing. And again, if they're healthy, God bless you. Every week we seem to be proven wrong, but I don't know what has to happen for them to start playing like they did when they were hit that 0-3 stretch when guys were injured. All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to get Breech the floor again because the AFC North is heating up, and it ain't because of the Steelers. It's because of some dude named Jake Browning, some other dude named Joe Flacco. We're going to talk about those two teams right after this.
We need your sports news anywhere.
We've got breaking news to bring you.
Then get your sports anytime you want them. Big trade news overnight to discuss.
Because we know you need sports all the time.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
A legend adds to their legacy.
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
CBS Sports HQ, anywhere, anytime, all the time.
All right, boys. I don't want to talk about the playoff implications because we'll get to that in a moment, but I do want to talk about these two teams. And Breech, I'll let you start because you're Jake Brownings. First of all, I was thinking about you earlier because we had the emergency podcast when Joe Burrow got hurt, and I'll take partial blame. We were yelling and screaming about how the Bengals were so unprepared in the summer, knowing that Joe Burrow's injury history, and they didn't do a better job of having a backup ready to go. It turns out we owe Jake Browning an apology because he has been lights out. I want you to talk about Jake Browning and then tell me specifically, have you ever seen one have a hand cramp and go to the locker room to get fluids? He said he didn't drink enough water after the game.
Is Joe Burrow a system quarterback?
I have seen a hand cramp because I've had one. You guys never had it where your thumb stretches out that it gets stuck in place?
What were you doing when you got that hand cramp, buddy?
Brinson, that's none of your business. High-fiving a lot of people. That's how it happens. You're not gripping anything.
Hey, chat, what do you think? What does the chat think Breech was doing to get a hand cramp?
Stop it.
Wrong answers only.
Throwing Brinson sucks hats to all my neighbors.
Hey-o.
Pull up your pants. I don't even know what buttons I pressed anymore. I hadn't used them in so long.
Here's the thing with Jake Browning, though, is that, no one saw this coming. And now we always say, with Zach Taylor, is he a good coach? Zach Taylor, I feel like, as the past 3 games, has been a better coach than he's been maybe ever in Cincinnati. These game plans are so meticulously planned to what Browning can do, taking advantage of all Browning's strengths. I mean, hey, let's throw 60% of the screens here. Okay, that's working. Chase Brown scoring 54-yard touchdowns on these short passes. And then the teams are saying, all right, well, we got to stop the short game now. But Browning's still good enough to go deep. It's not like he's Tim Boyle out there. And we saw T. Higgins have a huge catch on a deep pass. So Jake Browning can make all the throws. And so 3 weeks ago, if you would ask me if the Bengals could make the playoffs, I would have prayed and said maybe 5%. But now you look at the rest of the AFC, and I genuinely feel like they could give a game with any team, and they're good enough to get to the divisional round, maybe the conference title game. I don't think Jake could carry them to the Super Bowl, but I do think they could absolutely win a playoff game with Browning.
I could not be more impressed with him, and I will apologize that you wouldn't do it out loud, Breech, for the both of us for not having faith in Jake Browning. Brinson, I'll ask you about the Joe Flacco experience because that has been awesome to watch too. I keep coming. We talked about this last week. I'm sure the Jets are like, yeah, maybe we should have thought about Joe Flacco, although Zach Wilson had his best game of his professional career today. Where are you on Joe Flacco? And it's that this team feels like a playoff team as well. They're currently on the inside looking out of the playoff bubble.
Yeah, Browns at 8-5, 85% to get in the playoffs. I mean, when I said that I didn't think the Browns would make the playoffs, that was largely predicted on Trevor Lawrence not nearly shattering his ankle and having to play on a busted ankle against the Browns.
Got to own it.
Insane. What, me or Trevor Lawrence?
Both.
Well, I was also
Trevor Lawrence doesn't play defense, Brent. He didn't give up 3 touchdown passes to Joe Flacco.
I was going to add that it was also predicated on the fact that Joe Flacco wasn't going to go 26 of 45 for 311 yards and 3 touchdowns in a December game in Cleveland against the division leading Jaguars, who, by the way, whose defense has not been very good, especially when the run game doesn't really get going. David Njoku, 6 catches, 91 yards, 2 touchdowns. Flacco was awesome. I don't know that this is something that we're going to see continue.
Why?
He's Joe Flacco. He's old as crap.
2 games. He's looked as great as you could expect Joe Flacco to look times 10. They could have.
And it's almost January. His nickname is January Joe. He's not getting worse.
The only game he gets is at the Bengals, maybe for the Bengals playoff lives in January. The January game he gets.
He's a huge upgrade over DTR. He's a huge upgrade over Patrick Walker, PJ Walker.
Great signing. It's a great signing.
Why are you trying to talk yourself out of him?
Because he's old ass Joe Flacco, dude. Like the Jaguars defense is terrible.
He was drafted the draft class before your Matthew Stafford.
Good point.
But the Browns have such a strong roster. They just need the Browns just need a smart caretaker who doesn't make mistakes because the rest of their roster is so good, and that's what Flacco gives them.
Yeah,
exactly. And the defense has been great. I mean, Myles Garrett on the back end, they're getting some secondary guys back, and Njoku went off today. I think there's reasons for optimism in Cleveland for the first time since Kelly Holcomb was there. Since then, but that you get my point. All right.
Yeah. I mean, look, Joe Flacco is looking like Kevin Stefanski's done a great job the last 2 weeks scheming up stuff to make life easy for Joe Flacco.
I don't think that's I don't think you're necessarily wrong. I think it's easier for Stefanski to coach Flacco than it was to coach DTR and PG.
I think 100% because Joe Flacco is basically more statuesque, stronger armed.
Statuesque, I love
Case
that.
Keenum.
You know, it's funny. I got my Twitter got locked out for reasons that I don't need to go into, but I was just checking to make sure I didn't get hacked.
Same reasons Breech's hand is cramping.
Those were the reasons. But I was checking to make sure I didn't get hacked, and an old tweet popped up when the Broncos signed Flacco and Case Keenum, and I made the joke on Twitter. Whoever the coach was at the time wanted a tall and a small Case Keenum. So that's
there you go. Remember that time that when he was with Denver and I taught you to like believe the Broncos would win the division with Joe Flacco?
Calling a flag on that soccer room. All right, so let's fun to watch. We'll talk about
over under 2.5 AFC North teams who make the playoffs.
Let's think it to yourself, write it down, and we'll talk about it in a couple minutes. Debo is YOLO Deboing it up. He says go for 3 hours. So people in the chat, you've asked for this for 14 weeks. You're going to get it. Okay. So
that's right, folks. Debo is authorized Brinson tangents. That's right. We have Breech has nothing. Breech has his own hotel room. He has nowhere to go. Wilson is in a soccer haven, and I've got a bunch of sugar.
My God.
Hey, Debo, we're going to have a long conversation. I called my calls with Debo LME conversations for Luis Miguel Echegaray. He would always call Debo about particulars about the podcast. Debo, set aside some time tomorrow. All right, here we go. Next up, Breech. I would say you're probably the most positive person on this podcast. Brinson, you and I are probably battling for the other side of the spectrum. So knowing that, let's start with the positive. We're going to go with the Broncos Chargers game. Breech, you talk up the Broncos, and I'll let Brinson skewer Brandon Staley. And
speaking of the Chargers, who's your favorite NFL mascot?
What's that from?
Brinson, do you want the Broncos? Will that make you feel better?
What's that? No, go ahead, Breech.
The Broncos are good.
They are good.
Look, I think the thing about Russell Wilson, we watch him play, and he doesn't look as magical as he did with the Seahawks. He does just enough. The defense is pulling the wagon, and Russ is back at the back, just kind of shoving it, and it's moving a couple inches, and that's all you need here. I mean, all you need is Russell Wilson not to make mistakes because the defense has been playing so well, and that's what he's doing. He's playing lights out, and everybody. I mean, every throw he makes to Cortland Sutton is a highlight. They have an unbelievable chemistry, and with that, Sean Payton's got to love that. He's thinking, this is what I used to do in New Orleans. This is what I wanted the whole time. This is what Nathaniel Hackett wanted last year. And so, man, I think the Broncos are a threat to make the playoffs. But again, we'll talk about the AFC playoff picture in a second. But they dominated this game. This was a game the Chargers had to win. This was the Brandon Staley might get fired game where the Spanos is
Chargers
stuck.
are done, man. Shut
Well,
Herbert down. Herbert's got he's gonna have an MRI on Monday for what might be a broken right thumb.
I thought it was
Whoa.
index finger. It's a thumb.
Or index finger, excuse me. Yeah.
Here, before you go on, let me set this up. So they scored 7 points against the Broncos, the revitalized defense Breech talked about. They scored 6 points last week against the Patriots in a 6-0 win, which is embarrassing. Week before that, they scored 10 points. They are not scoring points. Kellen Moore there's a reason he's not in Dallas. Go ahead.
I mean, it is, you want to talk about, exactly, vindication for Mike McCarthy. They scored 38 points against the Lions in that wild shootout game at home. And they scored 30 against the Bears and 27 against the Jets way back in October. They had a week 5 bye. I mean, they've been over 30 points 3 times this year. And they have been under 20 points or less since their week 5 bye. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. 3 times they've gone over 20 points. 20 points. You have Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler. You brought in Kellen Moore to change how you were going to approach this thing. It's inexcusable.
Hold on. The defense sucks too, by the way.
Sure.
That's Brandon Staley's baby.
No. Don't get me wrong. Brandon Staley's got to go. I think what this is.
Hey, sorry, let me ask you this though, because I was shocked.
Keep interrupting me. It doesn't matter to me.
I know. I'm reverse Brinson and you. Then I get mad when you do it to me. But I'm more handsome, so it's okay. But I want to get to this point. We know it's true. Come on. Is it creepier when I whisper?
Yes.
I agree about Brandon Staley being in serious trouble, and I've tried to defend him. He has a winning record. That's the only point I want to make. It's not like he's 10 games under 500 in almost 3 years.
Well, that's fine, but I think this game in particular, where the Broncos started this season as bad as you can start a season, 0-3, and that third loss, 0-3, or excuse me, let's back this up, 1-5. The third loss, you go 0-3, you give up 70 points to the Dolphins. The win in week 4, everyone's like, oh, I thought they were trying to tank maybe. Like Sean Payton was like up to something. You barely beat the Bears. You lose to the Jets at home, who don't have Aaron Rodgers. You lose to the Chiefs, who only scored 19 points. And then they have ripped off, with the exception of that Texans game where they were in it and had a chance to win it. They're 6-1 in their last 7 games. They are right there in the division somehow. They are right there. And they were swept by the Chiefs. Oh, no, they're split with the Chiefs, excuse me. So, like, they have a chance to win the division. It's not a great one. But the point being is this game is so reflexive of what the Chargers screwed up this offseason. By all accounts, Sean Payton wanted the Chargers job. Now, he didn't come out and say it. You can't do that, even though he came out dragging Nathaniel Hackett.
I'm sorry to put it. What, by all accounts, but he didn't say it. So what are the accounts that we're talking about?
There were rumors, all the rumors leading up during the season and then the offseason were that Sean Payton wanted the Chargers job, but the Chargers would have to move on from Brandon Staley to go get Sean Payton, and that would cost a lot of money, and the team is cheap, and they don't want to fire Brandon Staley.
Well, draft picks too.
And draft picks. But look, Tom Telesco didn't want to go get Sean Payton because that would mean he'd be in a power struggle with the new head coach who, he didn't hire and the ownership hired. Whatever. The point being is that Sean Payton really wanted to coach Justin Herbert and to coach the Chargers. Instead, he ended up coaching the Broncos, and he put the final nail in the Broncos' coffin by beating them 24-7, and he's got his team at 7-6 with a legitimate shot of making the playoffs. The Broncos have the coin flip, 50% chance to make the playoffs.
I'll just say real quick, one sequence in this game that really kind of epitomized both team seasons was Russell Wilson throwing interception on Denver's first play from scrimmage. Boom. That's not good. The Chargers go out. They promptly get the ball at Denver's 13-yard line. That's easy points. Just take the freaking points. The Broncos defense holds them 3 and out. It's now 4th and 3 from the 6-yard line. Your team scored 6 points last week. If the Broncos are gifting you points, just take them. Take the field goal. Staley didn't do it. He went for it on 4th and 3. Chargers get stopped, obviously, because it's Staley making a 4th down call, and every call blows up in his face all the time. And then, boom, 2 possessions later, the Broncos defense got the ball back on interception. Same situation, except Broncos are on offense. They go down, score a touchdown, game over.
They're at the Lions, have the Patriots and Chargers at home, and then they're at the Raiders. I think there's a really good chance if they are 1-3, lose to the Lions, win the last three, 93% chance to make the playoffs. Most likely as a wild card, 10% chance, according to the Upshot, to host a wild card game. Obviously, if they go 4-0 to close out, they're going to get in the playoffs.
All right,
this team's good.
Let's talk about the AFC North playoff picture, which includes those. Yeah, well, I want to talk AFC North because I'm worried about the Steelers. So,
do you really want the Steelers to make the playoffs?
So let's start there. They're currently the 6th seed. I do not. The 7th seed are the Colts. I think both those teams are not going to make it. The Browns are number 5 at 8-5. I think they're in. We talked about that earlier. And then there's a glut of teams at 7-6. The aforementioned Denver Broncos, Breech's Bengals, my Buffalo Bills, the Houston Texans who lost to the Jets today. So Breech, who's in and who's out? It feels like the top 4.5 teams are set. The top 5 teams are set for me. The division leaders currently in the Cleveland Browns at 5. Who are you swapping in and out, and who are you leaning towards here at the end of week 14?
And just before Breech makes his picks, I was going to point out, Upshot has the Jaguars at 84% chance to win the AFC South. So pretty good chance, but Trevor Lawrence is banged up, so no guarantee. Chiefs at 91% chance to win the AFC West. Ravens 87% to win that division, and Dolphins at 92%. So I think, to your point, Ryan, you can pretty safely lock in those 4 seeds if you want to do this exercise, and it comes down to 7 teams battling for 3 spots.
But are all 7 teams really battling? Because I don't think the Steelers are going to make it, so they're out.
Of the 7 teams, the Browns are 8-5, and the other 6 teams are 7-6. So yes, they are battling.
The Steelers are out.
No, in my playoff picture that Ryan asked me about, they are not battling. Will, they are already out. They're done.
I think the Steelers are out.
Remember a month ago when I said the Browns are in, the Steelers are done. So this is the same exact feeling. Who knows? Maybe they make it. I don't know. I don't want to.
If they lose to the Colts, they're down to 9% chance to make the playoffs.
They're not.
I don't want to throw Ryan's team under the bus like that. Anyway, here are my wild card teams.
Yes, go ahead.
Browns, who I've been standing behind firmly for over a month now, despite all their quarterback woes, and becoming the 8th team since 1950 to win at least one game with 4 different quarterbacks, 4 different starting quarterbacks during the season. So I have the Browns in. I am out on the Texans. I think they're too banged up on offense. CJ Stroud in concussion protocol scares me. So I am not going to have them in. I am in on the Bills and Bengals. There, I said it. Browns, Bills, Bengals. I'm done.
That is my playoff picture for the AFC.
Well, so for the Texans, I think it's really interesting because if they're at 41% right now to make the playoffs. If they win this week at Tennessee, they're at 56% chance to make the playoffs. If they lose, 23%. Now, what's very interesting to me is that we just saw Derek Carr come back after his 2nd concussion this season and play the week after he suffered the concussion. We saw Brock Purdy do the same thing. We noted that, Breech. Remember when we were talking about that Purdy game in the Niners, how the NFL hadn't let anybody come back from a same week or same week of concussion, et cetera. They have changed, they have really eased back on that protocol process because guys are just coming back the week after and getting through concussion protocol. Now, maybe part of that is like the baseline stuff, but I do think that the Texans season may come down to whether or not they play CJ Stroud the week after he was placed in a concussion protocol and took a huge hit in a loss to the Jets, and whether or not you play him at Tennessee. And look, there are some moral implications and long-term franchise management implications you have to think about when you put CJ Stroud back out there that quickly.
I think it's only a medical decision. It's not like you don't have an option in deciding whether you're going to play or not.
You could just say we're not playing him because he suffered a concussion.
No, the medical staff has to clear.
No, I understand what you're saying. Point being is, like, if he doesn't play, you could toss Houston out. I'll take Indy, Denver, and Buffalo.
This YOLO Gardner stuff, I can't get behind. If Breech is out on YOLO Gardner, that concerns me.
Or what's Indy? Actually, I should probably take Cleveland instead of Indy, shouldn't I?
They're 8-5.
Oh, back on the Browns bandwagon.
Well, I mean, there's 8-5. They have an 85% chance to make it, and they play.
Yeah, why wouldn't you take them?
The Bears. Yeah, Bears, Texans, Jets, and Bengals. Even if they lose, yeah, if they win,
Brinson, stop looking at the percentages, and you got to say what you think is going to happen.
Yeah,
You're being
okay.
brainwashed by the upshot.
no, I'm just looking at the schedule to see like who they've.
Use
I
your
mean,
brain.
They're going to win. They're not going to go 0-4.
Okay, you're
Fair
talking to
enough.
yourself now because me and Breech are on the Browns bandwagon.
Yeah, I think you got to put the Browns in at this point.
Who's out?
So look, close the upshot and use your brain for this last one because the upshot is rotting your brain. That's what Breech is trying to tell you.
I'm going Browns, Bills.
Again, everyone's on the Bills. Finally,
I picked them to win the Super Bowl.
as
You-
Breech noted, week 13, you were off the Bills. You left.
You have been dragging them for like 2 years now.
I'm not
You
going to
know,
be gaslit.
everyone knows why, because Sean McDermott straight up Heisman'd you at the combine. You're like, hey, Sean, I went away with Mary too. He's like, I don't have time for your son.
Not going to be gaslit. You are
I'm not
switching.
gaslit. I'm telling everybody why you don't like the
Brinson.
Bills.
Who's your final AFC wildcard team?
The Broncos.
Ooh.
Broncos, Bills, and Browns beats Bears and Battlestar Galactica.
All right.
NFC.
Lastly,
Let's do the NFC.
and appropriately, we've done the NFC playoffs earlier as in the course of our conversation. So we're
I
going
don't really
to
think we did.
look, man. Debo is in a precarious place. I'm not.
Let's take 30 seconds each and name our wildcard teams.
Yeah,
Okay,
toss
you
up
go
the
first,
NFC
Breech.
playoff picture.
30 seconds, Brinson.
Go.
You go first, Breech.
Ah, I knew you were going to do that. So I was prepared. I'm gonna say the Eagles schedule.
Do you think the Niners get in?
I think the Cowboys are a much better team than the Eagles, but based on the schedule down the stretch, I'm going to give the division to Philly and put the Cowboys in the 5th wild card, the Packers in the 6th, and the Rams in the 7th. Boom, my 30 seconds are up. Turn my mic off.
So Joe Musso is making a case. He was doing this earlier today for the Colts, the Bears, who are playing actually some pretty inspired football. They're 5-8. They're on the
Bears
high
up
graphic.
ahead.
Look at it. Hey, Debo, click the Chicago. Click that Chicago team name.
Worth
there.
noting,
And,
our
number
colleague
12
Scott
down there,
Riley.
5-8, and we can scroll down and we can look at this schedule real quick. They have 1-2 in a row against the Vikings and the Lions. The defense, by the way, I believe 8 weeks ago. You look at
We're on the 30-second shot clock, so let's go.
We're talking about the for your boy Musso, man.
30 seconds. Let's go.
No, this is
Make
not
a
NFC.
case.
This is Bears talk. They hired Phil Snow, the former Panthers defensive coordinator, as a senior advisor. And the defense has been way better in EPA, takeaways. Awesome against the Lions. Look at it. I mean, 24, 13, 31 against the Lions, of course, 10 and then 13 again. They get at the Browns, Cardinals and Falcons at home, and at the Packers. If, as Joseph J. Musso suggests, they win those first 3 games. If they win out, they're at like 50% to make it. Do the Bears make the playoffs?
No, but I agree they need to win out to be in that conversation.
Yes. All right, so let's
If
get
they
back to
win
the
in
standings.
Cleveland on Sunday in Week 15, I'll entertain the discussion.
You'll allow it to be brought up in the
We
meeting.
will bring Musso back into the chat. We'll let Musso bring Musso onto the pod and have him discuss the Bears making the playoffs.
But I will say it's a pleasure to watch the Bears when they're playing well, so Musso doesn't have to act like a Debo and cry on his team. Gets.
By the way, the NFC
what
South are you ready for the contraction talk again? This
No. Give us your playoff teams in the NFC.
okay. I think Philly will get. I think Sanford gets a 1 seed. Philly gets a 2 seed. Dallas 3. Obviously, whoever wins the NFC South. I think it's either Tampa or Atlanta. Very close edge. I was sort of break that down for CBSSports.com earlier tonight. You can read it on the website. Philly at 5. And then I think I'm going to just keep rolling with Green Bay and the Rams.
Green Bay and the Rams. I think the Vikings are the odd team out. I don't hate that. It's not going to be the Saints. The Saints, I can't get over Derek Carr being a professional football player. Desmond Ridder continues to struggle with turnovers. Breech, we didn't talk about this team but the last time they played, who'd they play today and lose to?
Who
the Falcons play today?
The Bucs.
they lost to the Buccaneers.
Okay, let me just say this. 3 red zone turnovers in the first matchup. 3 anti-red zone turnovers this week by Des Ridder. It's a recurring theme. We got to figure it out. But I agree. I think Brinson's teams at the bottom of the playoffs are the ones.
Well, and let's not forget, Justin Jefferson came back from a long stint on IR, suffered a chest injury, was taken to the hospital. It really sucks. I mean,
I think more importantly than that, Josh Dobbs got benched for Nick Mullins.
Yeah, I mean, they scored 3 points. So the Rams are interesting here because they lost. I mean, look, you beat the Ravens and it's a whole different ballgame. They're 7-6 and in the playoffs as it going into Monday night. They have the Commanders at home, the Saints at home. They're at the Giants, and then they're at the 49ers in week 18 with what looks like a pretty decent chance because of the double tiebreaker San Fran has over Dallas and Philly that San Fran could sit everybody in week 18.
There it is.
So the Rams, I think the Rams have a decent chance to win out, go 4-0 and make the playoffs. And I would prefer them to Minnesota.
Yeah, I don't think Minnesota's going to do it. I think it's going to be the Rams. I agree with that. Geno didn't play today, but Drew Lock had an inspired effort. It wasn't enough against an upstart San Francisco team. So they got to get Geno back on the field to sort that out. It might be too little too late.
Obviously this would change too if like the Giants beat the Packers on Monday night.
All right. 10 seconds. Breech VP.
Brandon Aubrey.
Ah, you took my guy. Okay.
Setting NFL records. Of course, mine's a kicker. Multiple field goals. First person in history to hit multiple field goals at 59 yards or more. Longest field goal ever in the first quarter of a game. My God, Brandon Aubrey is crushing it. He might move up to number 1 of my kicker rankings this offseason. That is how much he's crushing it.
Brent, you want me to go or are you ready?
I can't even say what I was laughing about.
He's tackling like a drunk hyena.
I know what I'm.
I can go if you want.
Yeah, go ahead if you're ready. Yeah.
Breech, you are no longer the vice president of the Bengals fan club. Shout out to Jim Breech because you didn't take Jake Browning, arguably the best quarterback on the Bengals roster right now, healthy or otherwise. I'll just leave it at that. So great showing by Jake Browning. Overcame a crippling hand injury to get back on the field after you got an IV and drink a cup of water. He told the kids to drink more water after the game. Shout out to Jake Browning. Huge win. That team, Breech, like it or not, you love it. They're going to the playoffs. All right, Brinson, what do you got?
I think you could go Justin Fields, ran 12 times for a touchdown, threw another touchdown pass. You could go Lamar Jackson. You could go Tyquan Wallace. A lot of guys. You could go Derek Carr. I mean, heroically suited up despite all those injuries. But I'm going to go with a team that isn't really even in the playoff race. Zach Wilson.
No?
He got accused of refusing to go back out as the starter and just dragged by everybody. And he comes out and goes 27 of 36 for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns, hanging it to Garrett Wilson. And the running game couldn't get going against the Texans, and the Jets win 30-6. And I have people kind of questioning, is Zach Wilson going to be sticking around New York a little bit longer than they thought after this game?
No one questioned that. He's done. Great showing for him. Glad he had a big game.
You want to make a bet?
What am I betting? Whether he lives in New York after this season?
They got the Dolphins, Commanders, Browns, and Patriots to close. If they win 3 of those games, I think Zach Wilson is on the roster next year.
Okay. I wish him the best luck. I'm glad he played well. Aaron Rodgers is going to be the starting quarterback.
Zach Wilson on the Jets longer than Mac Jones on the Patriots. Yes or no?
That's a good bet. We'll revisit it in the offseason. Shut up, Breech, you jerk. All right. That's it. That's a wrap on week 14. Breech, Godspeed that you get back your electricity and you can not have to live in a hotel. You doing okay? Need anything?
Get all my free waters.
Got his free waters. Okay, he's set to go.
You know, he's like staying on a different floor than his family.
I'm surprised you didn't realize this, Brinson. That's his family requested that. So let's be real.
I was like, Breech, you next door. He's like, no. I was like, are you in the same floor? No. Are you in the same hotel? No.
He's in the next building over. All right, that's it. Breech, go see your family. Week 14, Sunday Super Friends is in the books. But don't worry, you can check out the Pick Six podcast all week on the YouTubes at NFL on CBS or wherever you get your audio podcasts. In the meantime, thanks to all you guys who watch and listen and comment. Thanks to Wilbur Brinson and Johnny Breech and Adebo.
Thanks to Debo for letting us go long tonight.
Got called out of the lot to talk about.
Oh, did you drop a GD?
No, I just said a lot to talk about. But thanks, Debo.
Breech, did he drop a GD?
No comment.
No comment. All right, see you guys next week. Bye-bye.